how did you qualify onto the Major League Tour this year?
So,
Hey everyone out there, this is the Duckett Exchange podcast, the first ever podcast. I'm Chris Russell, I'm the general manager here at Duckett Fishing, and of course everyone knows Boyd Duckett. We're here today to talk about fishing in general, and Boyd, I'm pretty excited to be part of a podcast.
hey, I'm pretty excited about it too. I'll be honest with you. I've been on a lot of them, other people's shows. Our marketing manager, Tyler, first came to me with the idea. I was like, man, I don't really have time to do a podcast, but I love this space, okay? And then I got, and I got to thinking, and there's so much guessing that I see when I watch other podcasts, because like I say, I love bass fishing. I watch the space. I read stuff. I enjoy it all.
Yeah.
And but there's so much guessing, certainly about me individually, about what my opinion is or what my direction is.
Right.
And so we can talk about it, and I can tell you directly. You don't have to guess.
You can give the straight scoop.
I gave the straight scoop, so
so
that'll
nice.
be fun.
I am looking forward to that. I get the chance to talk to you almost every day. So, I hear the insights of that. Our offices are right next to each other, and I most certainly have anything to do with Major League Fishing, but I've been in the fishing space a really long time. I've had the pleasure of working with a lot of brands, a lot of great smart people in the industry, whether they're smart accountants or people that run warehouses, and I've got the chance to work with a lot of great pros over the years too. So I'm looking forward to sharing my point of view, my knowledge of things, and I think we're going to cover topics from a really different angle than maybe other podcasts are doing out there. A lot of those guys are entertaining. They're great to listen to. Some of them love the shock value of things too. But I think our whole goal here is to just kind of give the straight truth as we know it and enjoy sharing what we love, which is a fishing industry.
That's absolutely right. And I think with your experience and the major brands that you've been affiliated with, to hear the manufacturing and the industry perspective is very different from what's out there. Mm-hmm. And then the same thing when it comes to leagues or pros, having lived through this space, we're certainly not guessing at why things happen. So it's going to be a lot of fun to just maybe be able to share something that audience doesn't hear, because they don't hear a lot of that out there.
We're going to talk about Major League news. We're going to talk about tournament stuff. We're going to talk about the newest techniques in the industry. We might even talk about a few new Duckett products. What the heck? It's our company. It's our podcast. We'll do whatever we want.
That's right.
And I bet you we're going to talk about forward-facing sonar at least once.
Forward-facing sonar. I can't imagine why that would ever come up, but if it does, we'll talk about it.
Stay tuned. So maybe we jump in and talk about the Toledo Bend, Stage 1.
Yeah.
Exciting event. I've been a fan of the sport. I tune in. Don't tell the boss, but I listen at work sometimes.
Hey, gotcha.
That's just kind of how it goes, right? But there were just some giants caught and guys catching 300 pounds of fish over the course. So what a fun event. Obviously, you were there. A lot of us got to watch. And just tell us what you think, how the season kicked off.
Yeah, so Toledo Bend, first off, what a great fishery. What a storied fishery for tournament fishing. Mm-hmm. And all the big fish that live in Toledo Bend. Really cool place. If anybody didn't watch it, I'll give you a tip right out of the gate. Forward-facing sonar was a major player at Toledo Bend. Newsflash. And so it further reiterates the change in bass fishing, that you can go to a Toledo Bend. Now, I will say, Toledo, we were there early, and we caught the coldest weather of the year.
Yeah, the weeks leading up to it
2 weeks leading
tough.
into it, below freezing, tons of cold weather. Water was super cold. But a lot of us still fished shallow knowing they were coming, mm-hmm. and which they didn't, or mine didn't. Mine didn't. And I'm not very good at forward-facing sonar, obviously. I thought it was. I catch them on Gunnersville out doing that.
Sure.
But they were hard to catch, even those fish that were out scattered. But that funky weather set this tournament up really well for those open water scattered fish. In the old days, we were stuck fishing for pre-spawn fish coming in. Mm-hmm. Before, we all had active target on our boat or whatever your brand is.
Yeah.
we didn't have that option. So when it goes south and fish get funky and they go out there and suspend, we now have a tool that we can go fish for them.
Right.
And you see the kind of weights. Toledo was not fishing very well. Hard to believe. I mean, ask Dustin Cannell, whacking them like he did. The way
couldn't do anything wrong.
Yeah,
for a while
96
there.
pounds. But that was because of the forward-facing sonar technology. And that's not really fair. I don't want to dominate this with forward-facing sonar, but probably every topic you bring up, it's going to have something to do with it.
Yeah.
But it's not the technology individually. Most of those that watch this podcast either have forward-facing sonar, they're probably going to buy forward-facing sonar. But I'll tell you right out of the gate, all that goes with that. Really what you're doing is you're fishing for a new fish, a suspended fish that used to be a needle in a haystack when we drove over them. We have learned how much they swim and move, so without forward facing, you couldn't efficiently fish for those. I have fished tournaments for those same kind of fish prior to having active target on my boat.
Yeah.
But now being able to dial it in. But let me tell you what it is. It's not the equipment. It's not forward by itself. That enables you to do it. But it is technique specific. And there's a lot to it in baits and presentation and line size and head size and hook size. No different than any other technique we use. I think a lot of the fans maybe or users, new users of forward facing, they go buy this equipment, they spend all the money, they get it set up right. Most of the dealerships, good dealers in America now have, we know all the tricks on how to set it up, and they go out there and they can see them, but they can't catch them. That's the deal. So, but I can say the same thing about, I was recently talking to somebody about it, and I compared it to the drop shot when it came on the scene. And if you guys remember, Aaron Martins was pretty darn good at throwing a drop shot.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So good that everybody else on tour couldn't catch him like he could catch him.
Right.
I don't care how much time you spend.
Everybody had one tied on.
That
doesn't mean you caught him like
But
Aaron
there was
did.
Aaron Martins who was at another level.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And then, I think about jerkbait fishing during my era when tournament fishing was my primary time. And Kevin Van Dam can catch him on a jerkbait when no one else can. To the point that where I remember the field throwing a jerkbait and Kevin dusting everybody because he understood the technique. He had perfected the technique, and he could catch fish that the rest of us couldn't. So it's a lot more than bolting it on your boat. It's its own world.
So you think we know as a new angler, maybe getting a new boat this year, upgrading your electronics this year, you're going to learn pretty quickly. If you spend some time, you're going to identify fish, you'll be able to see them. But it's those subtleties you're talking about that Aaron could do or that Kevin had the skill set refined over time. Just like some of these guys with forward facing, they've learned how to read the fish, how to see their action and reaction to baits, and then how to present baits in a very precise manner to catch them when other people can't.
It's a talent, man. It's a lure technique that's or a presentation technique, multiple lures. But you're just because you buy the equipment, you are not Dustin Cannell or Jacob Wheeler or Josh Bertrand or Justin Lucas and some of our top guys. They are at the next level, and it takes hours and hours. Think about when you learned how to fish a specific technique. If you learned how to crank properly, you throw a crankbait properly. David Fritz. We all threw crankbaits in the old days. David Fritz was kicking our brains in at cranking events, and it took us a while to realize it's a whole lot more than you throw it out and wind it back. So the world has to go through the transition of understanding. Not only do I have the equipment, but how do I fish for those fish? What are the techniques? And those guys are way ahead of you. You can't compete with them because you buy the equipment. You got to put the hours in. You get 500 days on the water, understanding what forward-facing fish do, how they respond, when to change colors, baits, heads, weights.
Sure.
Then you're getting in the game. It's a complicated deal, and there's two sides to it.
Sure.
So I know there's a ton of controversy around forward-facing. I don't want to get off track. You asked me about the Toledo event, but
tell me about the Toledo event.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Because a bunch of guys fished offshore. and the fish were there, staged at a variety of depth, but a lot of the field didn't fish offshore. Mm-hmm. You touched briefly on the fact that you were expecting those fish to come up. We saw some guys catching a couple fish on a buzzbait, for gosh sakes.
Yeah.
Right? But what you think, or what do you think drove that difference of the shallow versus the deeper bite, or that suspended bite?
Yeah, because I really thought that the deep bite would outplay the offshore. I thought the offshore would be coming in. Mm-hmm. A bunch of us did, quite honestly. And really what happened, and I've seen this happen before, in the areas that I fished, I don't have all these answers, but in the areas that I fished, I was in an area who caught him on a buzzbait and in an active area, but his water was a lot warmer at the beginning when we got there. Mm-hmm. My water was in the 40s and warmed up. By the first day of the event, it was 58, and it was in the low 60s, and that's too much too fast.
Yeah, that is a big swing in a couple days.
Bass don't like change. Mm-hmm. One thing, I've said for years, everybody said, well, what's the perfect weather, or what do you look for if you're a bass fisherman? I don't care what it is, as long as it doesn't change. I can manage that. Mm-hmm. If the water's 39 and stays constant, I can manage that. If it's 90 and stays, I can manage that.
Sure.
Wind blows, I can manage that. But it's when the sun shines, it doesn't shine, and it rains, and then wind and cold, and especially water temperature.
That's a lot like people. We're the same way.
Yeah,
right?
we're the same.
We don't like all this change. It's crazy sometimes.
We don't like it. Yeah, boy, if you don't like change, you better stay away from me. That's the truth.
You are not afraid to make a change.
I am not afraid of change. But yeah, so that's kind of what happened. I felt like I think the shallow guys, had we not have had such a warming trend, because I was catching them in practice. Several guys were. I mean, I know we can, at bass.
Well, yeah, half the field went shallow on the first day they fished.
Yes,
so they must have thought they were going to be successful there. They were setting up to have that bite.
Yep. We had some guys, Dean Rojas, he was in the 30s in weight, 30-pound range. I mean, he had a good vent, and he was managed to catch a shallow fish. Yeah. I think Mark Davis had 46 pounds one day. He was shallow. So there were a few shallows coming and playing, but it didn't compete with the offshore.
Yeah,
the forward facing. That nasty forward facing.
It just really started to separate, pretty aggressively. That the forward facing just kept going, and the weights kept climbing and climbing, and there were guys that in some of those shallow events that were pretty successful, but they just couldn't keep pace. The numbers just weren't there.
Numbers weren't there to keep pace. Yep. So $5 on the line. We're going to Santee in a week. I leave Friday.
Yep.
It's Santee at the end of February.
I used to live right down the road from Santee.
Santee Cooper. You know the weights. You know the history.
Right.
Is forward facing going to win that event?
$5, huh? I thought we only bet $1. I thought we were
normally we bet $1. Hey, look, people watching, they don't know. They don't know how big a bet this is.
I know.
We're usually $1 a game on football.
We bet lots of dollars in this office, but $1 at a time.
But this is because you see all the rage. We go to Toledo, fantastic shoreline. It's one offshore. Is forward facing going to play?
Oh, I think it's going to play. No doubt. Is it going to win? The bet is if it's going to win.
Well,
is that the bet?
Let me back off. What
is the bet?
Let me back up. All right. Forward facing will always play because I use it shallow. Mm-hmm. So if I'm fishing grass lines, cypress trees, I might spot fish or see fish moving.
Yeah.
And so that's not what I'm talking about. Open water forward facing.
Yeah.
Fish.
Well, there's some similarities between those two lakes, right? You got standing timber, you got trees out there, but you've also got all this shallow cover. It feels like it might still be a little early for that shallow bite to be the one. So I'm saying yes.
So here's the bet. We didn't clear the bet.
I already said yes.
Here's the bet. All right, he said yes. So of the top 10, will more than 5 be offshore forward facing?
I'll say yes.
Okay. All right. I'm going to take the opposite on this one. I'm going to take the under.
All right.
Less than 5 guys offshore.
All right.
And the audience will know better than anything because they can watch live stream. I can't watch live stream. So, but you will, or somebody will get Tyler to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Legitimize it.
Right.
I think less than 5 because, man, it's Santee at the end of February and then biggins get up shallow. They'll be spawning mid-March.
Yeah, if it was 2 weeks later, I'd say there'd be zero
Yeah, I
question
gotcha.
about it,
That's
right?
fair.
But when you guys are going to be there, it's just a skip away. It's literally 5 days from now or so. You'll be out there chasing them. So we can't help but we talk about forward facing. The fan experience with forward facing, whether it's Toledo Bend, it's coming up on Santee, it's any event that we have coming up. It's really changed the way the fans of the sport are digesting the tournament themselves. You know, I look at seeing some of the comments and it's interesting. There's a way that you can be educated in how they're doing it. It's great with the live stream because the pros have learned to talk about what they're doing as they're doing it, which for me is really helpful because I'm a forward newbie, right? I got lots to learn. But I also see the back of their head a lot too.
Yeah.
You know, so what's your take on that? On how that's just changed the opportunity for fans to view and learn and maybe just absorb kind of the enjoyment they get out of watching pros?
Well, I'll say that I don't know that it's a majority, but there are plenty of fans that, and we get a lot of fan feedback. We love that. We track that at Major League Fishing. We've got a lot of negative comment coming back because of what you just said.
Yeah.
I can tell you as a fan of the sport, when I go back and watch shows or I go back and watch live stream, I also don't like watching the same thing. Okay,
Yeah.
So I think about like our northern events where everybody's got their head down and they're looking at forward facing, and then you're fighting a smallmouth with a 6-pound line for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, being at the event, it's phenomenal. Nothing I like better than to catch giant smallmouth offshore. I mean, that's just one of my favorite things to do.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, who doesn't? Who doesn't love it? But I will say, when I watch it in a competition, it's not as compelling to me. And to me, with the forward-facing issue, it's that I don't really know what he's excited, but I don't know why he's excited, and I just see a swing or whatever it is. Now, what I think I'm going to offer may be the game changer. You noticed at this first event, we had just a few guys that we split screen their active target unit, and so that you could see both the angler and their unit.
What they were looking at.
Game changer.
100%.
For me.
Yes.
For me,
Yeah.
it was a game changer where I could see what Cannell was looking at, and I could see what Wheeler was looking at.
Right.
And I could see what he did right and maybe what he did wrong and whether the fish reacted or did. And so, to me, that was compelling. I mean, that's juice.
Yeah.
You know, if you've got a forward-facing unit and you don't take the time to watch that, you're not very serious about learning how to use it. Because
Super educational.
super educational,
Yeah.
and it also was exciting. I found like when they would scan over. I remember Cannell in that last period when he was crushing me, scanned over. Oh, there's one, and I could clearly see him go by it and then come back to it. Now it's centered in the screen. He throws over there. I'm staring at the screen. I don't even know. I never saw Cannell. You know.
Yeah.
And then the fish comes up and hits it, and so you got to live it. That might be the fan answer. It
sure feels that way to me.
Yeah.
And it's almost like that exact scenario. You know, they're swooping by it. Oop, they come back to it. Oh, that's what one looks like on forward facing, right?
That's what we're looking for.
You haven't really done it, and you're still learning. Which, hey, everybody's learning. Right? Whatever we think forward-facing means today, at the end of the summer, at the end of the tournament season, it's going to be a little different.
Yep.
Guys are going to apply it different ways. They're going to learn it. Hey, some of my buddies in saltwater are using it now, finding fish underneath the bridge pilings, you know, looking for redfish or sheep's head or flounder. They're already taking what they see from the bass tournament stage and applying it to other fisheries. So it's going to continue to evolve because we're all new. No matter how much you're good at it, the Dustin Cannells of the world that have refined their techniques already, it's getting better, it's evolving, it's changing all the time. So
that's right.
I love being able to see the screen, though. That, to me, makes a big difference.
I can tell you in my opinion, you're going to have to learn how to deal with it because it ain't going away.
Yeah.
And though it may not as currently, now we're trying to figure out ways to make it exciting to watch.
Right.
But I don't know that any of us want it to go away. because it's now opened up another whole avenue for us to go catch fish. You can still go do all the things you ever knew how to do, but when you're not catching them, you now have a new tool with a new set of fish and a new great day ahead of you.
Sort of turn around and see what's on the other side, right?
That's why we all buy the best rods and reels and baits and boats and what's the difference, guys? And so,
is it a boat ride or a fishing trip?
Yes,
right? That's kind of the difference in some days.
So it's just not going anywhere. And that's how it is. And I don't think it should go anywhere. I think it's great that the technology is allowing us to access more fish and have better days on the water.
Right.
Whether you never fish a tournament.
Yeah.
If you can have a better day on the water, that's what you spent all the money for. You got 118,000 tied up. So what's another 4? Now you got 122.
Just rounding it up.
We'll spend anything to have a great day on the water.
The electronics manufacturers love that idea. What's another 4? Just put it in. Do you think it slows down the game, so to speak? Certain things, you think of sports in general, whether it's basketball or whatever, certain things slow down the game. Do you think forward-facing slows things down, and that's some of the comments you get from viewers because there's not as much casting and just activity on the screen?
If you're not looking at the scoreboard, if you're in the event, it ain't slow because they're smashing them. They're catching them. Right. Okay, they're catching them. To watch the problem, I think, from my fan perspective. Okay, now just my fan perspective.
Sure.
Is that I think you see, You see a still angler that looks slower and it feels slower, and it's not compelling to watch. I mean, because I don't know what he's doing. I can't see. I can see him throwing a spinner right to the bank, and I can see the stump.
Right.
So I think if we saw that, if we could split screen I have no idea what that costs or what it's going to take in technology. I know we're working to try to figure this out.
Sure.
But if you could see that every time, I think it then will be very compelling. But definitely doesn't slow the game down.
Well, you get enough anglers putting a 42-inch TV on the front of their boat, then you won't even have to split the screen. You'll just see it all right there in front of them, right?
Yeah.
Right? You say, forward-facing is here to stay. It's sticking around. Most certainly, our business as a manufacturer of rods, reels, baits, we're reacting to forward-facing sonar. A lot of people are reacting to forward-facing sonar. So we as an industry believe it's here to stay. And we're building more products to make people more successful with the technology. Techniques are evolving. People are bringing new products to market all the time. I'll be shocked if the best item at ICAST isn't somehow centered around the application of forward-facing sonar. Don't you think?
Got to be, man. It's definitely, you look at the time we spend around here, working on it. We've got some great new baits under construction. We have some great baits. We launched a great offshore bait with the Subtletail series, 4.5, 3.8s, and then came back with the 3-inch, which has turned out to be magic. I mean, that's the number one bait I'm currently throwing.
Yeah, that bait existed before I came on board, before forward-facing sonar, but it has become a great application for that bait. We didn't really intend it at the time, but man, it's a winner.
But it's a winner. But dropping to that smaller size and then learning what to do with it and in head size and weight, line diameter and all that stuff. So, but a lot of baits, a lot of the straight tail baits that you're able to work are popular. We're working on a couple ourselves that'll fit. But so you're right, that's and then some of the other baits that aren't just the swim bait, because I think about summertime forward facing this past summer, we're working on that reveal jerk bait, which is just a deep dive. I don't even know if we have one, but the super deep dive, fast it's a heavy
sink
bait, 3/4 ounce. And one of the things that I experienced in testing that bait is that when you start weighting these baits, crankbaits or jerk baits or whatever you're putting down there, when you put the weight in it so it gets there quickly, you definitely want that because we know they'll swim off. You don't get the action anymore. So we went to what's almost like a square bill style to make that bait dart and do what a jerk bait's supposed to do. So that's, to me, we're coming into the first season where it'll have the opportunity to show off some. And
yeah, just a week ago, I was at a distributor show talking to a bunch of independent tackle stores. They're looking for products that they can recommend to their customers. You show them that bait, for example, because that's the one familiar with. They love that it's got a little bit unique look to it. That wide beam bill you're talking about really stood out to them. And so, whether it's a dealer that, I talked to a dealer from Ohio, I talked to a dealer from Tennessee, I talked to him from Alabama last week, and you quickly talk to them about, what's happening in their store, and they know that that's a demand.
Yeah.
Customers are coming in, and they don't always know exactly what to ask for. That's why live stream and watching fishing TV shows helps. But they also are looking for these tackle shops for knowledge and information. So it's coming. New products are coming. It's exciting. That's a cool thing about our industry is, there's still a lot of small companies that can be fast. They can bring cool things to market really quickly
really fast.
and be good at it. And I think that's another exciting part, that there's going to be new techniques we haven't even dreamed up yet.
No,
so
we don't even
maybe
know
some of these smart tournament guys are already thinking about it, but it's coming.
Yeah, and then repurposing, now that we're thinking about what works forward facing, we want something that'll get down there, something official will react to, like repurposing, a blade spoon.
Oh, yeah.
I would venture to say that a blade, that's my number one search bait, definitely. It may not be what I end up being the perfect bait, but it's what I can cover water with, because it drops to them, and it's a great, let it fall, like the old Silver Buddy or reaction.
Yeah.
So, we kind of just took what was an old blade spoon, put super good hooks on, a little better design. It's a late model. But that's what the BD blade is, and that's one of my favorites for chasing them down. So
that's a great example of taking an old school technique that had kind of run its course, not very fashionable and fancy anymore, and all of a sudden you apply it a new way and use a technology that makes it even more effective than it ever was.
That's it.
Yeah.
Put it right in the heart of it. Hey, the jerk bait, the reveal is a jerk bait.
Yeah.
Been around forever. We just figured out how to weight it, put a bill on it so it acts really good. It goes to, and it works now for forward facing.
Works at depth.
And I think you're going to keep seeing that. All the manufacturers are trying to come, some with some good ideas and some, not as good, but,
Yeah, sure.
But keep trying. Same with us. Hey, we build all kinds of stuff, folks. If you don't know it, that doesn't work, and you don't get to see it. Okay,
so, it never makes it to the shelf.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
But it's
that
trying.
is for sure. Yeah, no doubt about that. So. Boyd, we've talked a lot about the stage one. Excited about stage two coming up. But I think we'd be remiss if we didn't jump in and talk about the changes that Major League Fishing have made going into this season. One thing we jokingly said a little earlier, you're not afraid of change. And that's one of the things that I have always enjoyed about Major League Fishing from the beginning. I've not been personally involved in it, but I most certainly have sent you some checks. I've sponsored it with some of the brands I've worked on.
Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for that, Bubba.
Glad I could be a part of the team. But one thing that I told anyone who'd listen, the sales guy at the time, is Major League Fishing is not afraid to try something. It doesn't always work. It changes, and then you try something else. And it's always to try to continue to evolve the sport and move things forward. So I know there's changes. Some have been received with a little bit of ill will, maybe, or animosity out in the social media world. But I thought we should at least talk a little bit about the changes that are taking place. And maybe one of them is the change to the live stream process on that first day for each group at Toledo Bend.
Yeah, we could have done a better job probably of messaging that. We did our best we did our best. We had messaging out there because when we did the whole business restructure for the future, smaller field size, 4-day events, and all of that forces 4-day live streaming, and then of course expanded live streaming by picking up additional event, all the team series, all the other championships, and those things. But we could have done a better job, I guess, of telling the world we did it. But
hindsight's always 20/20,
hindsight's always 20/20. But I'll say about the changes. The whole purpose back in 2009, I think, is when we first got this idea up, and Gary and I were noodling through it, and he got me interested, and I started spending some real business time trying to build business, create a partnership with a network, all those things that happen. The purpose for Major League Fishing was to try to go out there and elevate the opportunity for the highest level of bass fishing. That was the original purpose. We do a lot of other things now. We're the biggest tournament organization, bought FLW. We run a lot of grassroots. We have all kinds of programs we work on. But to stay focused on Bass Pro Tour and the highest level of bass fishing, it was obvious to me, and that was at the, that was really in the heart of the time that my career, the 7 or 8 years that I really focused, because I've always had businesses and done other things, but that was the primary focus of my time. It seemed like when I looked at other sports that had grown, and there I was, and I had a lot of success during that 8-year period, but I could see a clear ceiling, to our sports. Not anybody's fault, okay?
Right.
Nobody did anything wrong, but having the entrepreneurial spirit that I did. Then, and I spent a bunch of time with one of my favorite people in the world, Gary Klein, who has done this since he was 17, understands the whole history, and he and I talked for hours and hours and hours about what it takes to grow it. And what it takes to grow it is what other sports have done. To collect entry fees and have a payout is easy. But in true sports, whether it's the PGA or NASCAR, PGA is probably one of the best comparisons. It's individual sport.
Right.
What provides revenue for the top guys, this has nothing to do with amateur fishing or enjoying tournament fishing. This has to do with tournament fishing for a living, okay?
Yeah.
For your top guys. Those sports have found a way to offer their product that's compelling enough to draw big audiences, which then can be sold for sponsorship. What we simply do is we sell media at Bass Pro Tour, at Major League Fishing at the highest level. We are selling eyeballs, which convert to dollars. And because you bought lots of it in previous jobs. And so it became my responsibility to try to, if I'm going to bring more money into the sport, to have a high-paid group of professional anglers, we have to have a product that has a high number of views. And I didn't know what that magic bullet was. Still don't know what the magic bullet is. I know we started different, and we've done a lot of things different, and we've been very successful. We have aired, I think, more than 3 times any of the ratings our sport in any league had ever accomplished. So we're arguably, we are 3 times bigger. But that's still not the PGA, and a long way from it.
Right.
And it ain't NASCAR, and the $100 million checks aren't coming in, right?
Sure.
So,
right.
But you have to continue to try.
Yeah.
So that driver, and I'll never change from that. I may never hit the home run, but I'll never stop trying. So that requires change, hard as that is to be. So that evolved into a restructure of the company where we realized that some of the things that were tough on our fans, our live stream was long, being 6 days. It was confusing, A group, B group, 40 fish this day, 40 fish that day. And also the platform with 80 guys in it. When you take the names out of the boxes, I'm running a business, then it's hard to have all those guys be superstars. I mean, there's not 80 cars on a NASCAR track for a reason. There's and they did have 42 and they pulled back 37 because it's too much for the space, for the money that's available in the space. For those guys to be super financially successful, there's a ceiling.
Right.
So a 40-man field is probably perfect. But we landed at a 50-man field. A lot of things we can do with it. It fits our process. So we made that change moving into this year. We're run 4-day events. We're going to live stream all of our team series events, some additional events. It'll all be in a row. All the anglers are on we've corrected a lot of the things that were hard on our fans to follow and understand. Now I say that because there's only 50 guys in the end. The cut process is 80, 65, 50.
Right.
We got with the Angler Association. They wanted a declined cut. But we're doing this year what we'll always do. there again, I get beat up for change. I only want to change once. So we made all the changes.
Yeah.
And this is what you see. So that eliminates the first 2 days.
So really pushing a lot of those changes into the season of 2024.
Yep.
So making these changes, and you know, I'm a fan of the sport, like we've talked about. I most certainly always have been. But when you're not focusing on it, you know, a lot of the announcements came out, and it was fall, and people were deer hunting, or then it was Thanksgiving, and we were doing family stuff, and then it was Christmas, and the next thing we know, we woke up, and it's like, wow, things are different, and you guys did your due diligence and tried to tell the message, but I wasn't paying attention. You know, you don't always dial right into that, and it's nobody's fault. You can say it as many times as you want, but until I'm ready to hear it, I just don't. It goes right over my head, or that's not important to me, or I just delete that email, or whatever I do. Yeah. So I think it's something that what happened is the change took place, and there's a bunch more new streaming to come, but we haven't seen that yet, right? That's not here yet. So we're going to gain the benefit of you making that change. And then forcing all these changes, force is a strong word, applying all these changes into 1 year makes it a little easier over time, because we're going to get used to it, and it's going to make sense, and we're going to see it play out over and over.
That's right.
Yeah.
And you know, to be clear, you know, all of us won't have the opportunity to fish in it, and that's the downside. If there's any downside to the change, it's the fact that at the end of this process, there'll be 50 guys and there won't be 80 guys.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I wish it could be 200 guys.
Right.
But it's my job to make an opportunity for some group of names, those that can qualify, and they keep coming. You know, and through the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals, we have look at Drew Gill. Man, he blew through the invitationals, and he's eating it up, and those guys will keep coming. So
welcome to the event, right?
Welcome,
that guy,
welcome
boom,
to professional bass fishing.
Yeah, good for him.
And so that set of 50 will turn. But that platform should be elevated, especially with our increased live stream. You know, we do tons of television, as I think everybody's aware of.
Right.
But part of this business plan is to increase our digital presence. So finding additional platforms to stream on and just basically grow the numbers. You know, I'd like to hit 1 million people instead of 450,000, or maybe 2 million people. Maybe we're not dreaming big enough.
Right.
But how do we collectively and cumulatively hit a large enough audience? Then how can and I promise you this, okay, I'm certain of this, there'll be 25 of that 50. I can't put names on who they'll be. There'll be 25 of that 50 that make 7-digit incomes. Our world's never been there. That's part of this.
Yeah.
And so it's a great opportunity for professional bass fishing. It just sucks for those of us, I put myself in that category, that probably aren't going to be able to compete with and make it to that level. But my job is to create the level, and not for everybody in the world as much as I'd like to. So.
Well, we can't all make that, right? No. If I've been lucky enough to be in a boat with some professional anglers over the years at a variety of levels, and you know, I got to fish with Shaw Grigsby in Florida, right, where he is just
awesome.
Grew up down there and knows everything there is to do. You know, I got to fish with Skeet Reese at different places. I've been in the boat with Van Dam, and there's just a whole nother level that those guys can run at.
Oh, man.
And especially each one of them when they were at the peak of their time, or, you know, Jacob Wheeler now, who, you know, is on our team, and we get to spend time with him. And it's just another gear, if you would say it, or whatever. And it's great to be able to elevate those guys. And the work that we're doing in our industry, in our sport, is the fishing industry can't pay for it all. So we've got to find these bigger sponsors that are willing to pay for those eyeballs, and they're just shopping for eyeballs. You know, they can go sponsor and pay for golf, or they can do fishing, or they can do rodeo, or whatever. So you've got to deliver a product that they are willing to invest in, and then that's what ultimately, like you said, is gives these guys a chance to earn a really substantial paycheck as a pro athlete.
And that's the business model for growing a sport. If you look back to the big ones, you know, to the NFL back when, you know, the AFC and the NFC and if you look back at what the money those guys made, you know, everybody's got to realize it was tiny once. You forgot that.
Yeah.
And they did a lot of the right things to get there and become the NFL, which, by the way, just had 70 million viewers. All-time ever high.
Yeah.
70 million viewers.
It's amazing.
Watch the Super Bowl, and over time, one of the best ones ever, probably.
Yeah. 1 and 2 out of 70 million.
Yeah, I said 1 and 2. I watched it too. So, give us just 7.
Yeah, right.
It'd be a game changer.
Well, you talk about that, and NASCAR. Think how far they've evolved. The days of one driver with one big sponsor for the whole season, right? The Jeff Gordon car was DuPont. That's all that was ever on it. Yeah. The STP car, the Haviland Motor Oil car, that's all that was ever on it. Now those guys have a different sponsor every week. They might have 15 sponsors on that car through the course of the season. Maybe it's more than that.
It's crazy.
Because they've had to evolve and let more people in and to keep up with the finances of that. It's just not like that. You don't see that same car running every race. Richard Petty running the STP car back in the old days. That just doesn't happen anymore. Richard would have 18 different sponsors running around. So
you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And that's a great success story too. And that was that's one of the stories that I know well. I grew up in Charlotte and in and around racing, and I still have friends that do it. They're about to age out of it, but it's interesting, and it took an individual that was willing to make change, and a lot of them, and they didn't work early on. People, especially if you're younger, you don't realize how insignificant NASCAR was. In 1988, Bill Elliott won $1 million. Just call it 1988 isn't very long ago in my life. Okay, some of you weren't born, but that's not that long ago.
Yeah.
And Bill Elliott won $1 million in a single season by the stars aligning and won all the majors that were that year, and it was just impossible, but it happened. My first full season fishing, I won $1 million. Our sport was bigger when I entered it than NASCAR.
Wow.
Was it 1988?
I did not know that.
Think about that.
Well, and he had a nickname, right?
$1 Million Bill.
$1 Million Bill.
$1 Million Bill.
You didn't get that nickname, though. I don't remember them calling you that. But $1 Million Bill, I do remember that. So.
That's exactly right. So the process of trying to figure out how to take what had been around since the early 1950s in racing, Winston Cup racing, and a bunch of cars going, I remember back in the day when all that was taking place and sponsors and the field, it's a bunch of rednecks going in a circle was the appearance of it.
Yep.
And somehow that became this technological advanced sport that the intricacies of 2 turns of wedge in the left rear and the difference it made, and they taught the fans. And by the way, none of them raced. The fans.
Sure.
The fans didn't race.
Right.
Okay? So they found all these people that became interested in their sport by finding a way to offer it, how they covered it and how they offered it. And it was appealing enough to hit those massive numbers and become NASCAR. That's our dream.
Yeah.
I mean, that would be our dream, would be for us to discover a way to take the sport that we love and we're proud of and we all love to participate, package it and put a bow on it, to where the rest of non-fishing America wants to watch it. That's the home run. I mean, that's the dream.
We have a little segment that you and I have cooked up called Controversy Corner. And the idea here is we're going to just directly, head on, address a couple issues. And in this one, I'd like to ask you a couple questions, just pretty specific about you and kind of what's going on in the industry right now. You good with that?
No, I don't think I agreed to that.
But
we're on the podcast.
We're going to spring it on you.
We're on the podcast,
let's give it a shot. Yeah. So, Boyd, one of the things that I've seen out there is that it's almost like the industry enjoys kind of poking fun at you. In some cases, almost like making you out to be the villain. And I think part of it comes because they just don't know you well. And I know that you also are a figurehead as the leader of Major League Fishing. But God, doesn't that get to you sometimes or kind of bother you at certain times?
Well, I can tell you from experience of having built companies and tried and failed that anytime you have change, it's hard on people. It seems like from the very beginning we were somewhat disruptive in the attempt. Obviously, everybody knows what our attempt is to try to raise and elevate an opportunity for professional anglers and grow the sport.
You started a new tournament trail and in some people's minds stole anglers, right?
That's right. And so, there's been a lot of controversial moments, but it's interesting the time, the day and age we live in with social media, and how popular it is to be a hater, really, and not just myself, but I see that in all sports to a certain extent, and so that's an interesting change over time where that's become so popular. But quite honestly, I guess maybe because I stay so busy and I stay focused on the prize and I go and go and go, it doesn't really bother me. I guess I feel like I understand social media. I actually quite enjoy the people within the industry, some of the podcasts and characters within our industry.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, I can't help but laugh. I mean, some of the things that
They're
I've
pretty creative.
out there,
I'll give them that.
Yeah, and I appreciate all of that. And I appreciate the passion that people have. If they're mad at me and they want to turn that into a meme and it makes all of us laugh, I'm good with that. I mean, because I'll be honest with you, people sent me so many different things and I've laughed my tail off. They all expect me to be upset about it. I'm like, that is funny. I mean, music videos that have been, and I'll be honest, I'll sit there and watch it and laugh about it, and I have a great appreciation for that. But you can't, the world, normally that's driven by a misunderstanding or misinformation where people receive that. So I think there's a lot of that out there. Social media has allowed people, an individual to assume something.
Right.
Then it gets repeated, and then it becomes the truth. That's what social media has become in all facets, not just ours.
No question.
And so, and most of the time, and I read some of it, and I'm like, where does this come from? I mean, where could you possibly get? So that was one of the things that made me interested in this podcast was to, and I don't have good news all the time, and I've made tons of mistakes, and will continue to do so, and couldn't be further from perfect. But it is, I like to know that. That's why I go on everybody's podcast that I ask. All of it is to tell you the truth. Yeah. You can hate me at the end of it, but at least you'll know the reason. At least you'll have a reason.
At least you went to the source to get the information.
That's right. So. And it's amazing how people, if they read it 2 or 3 times, that they just assume that it's correct. And some of it is just not even a subject that has ever come up. It's just out of the wind. I saw something about banning forward facing. That's kind of one of the more recent items.
Yeah.
Duckett wants to ban forward facing. I've never made that statement. I never will make that statement. I'm a supporter of. I mean, forward facing is controversial, and we'll have a chance to talk about that.
Yeah,
I see the negative and I see the positive. It's not my place to have any control of that. It's part of the evolution in technology in bass fishing, and we appreciate the manufacturers in the space that have brought that to us.
Right.
The opportunity for any individual, whether you tournament fish or not, to go out and be able to catch more fish. That's technology we want.
Sure.
We want to have a better day.
Yeah.
We're not riding in tenors with 9.9s anymore, right? Thank God.
Right.
I mean, I grew up doing that. Stick steer boats and a flasher, and there's some nostalgia to the old days and all that kind of stuff. But guys, it's way more fun to go bass fishing today with the equipment that we have and have a good time. So just when I read something like that, I'm like, where does this stuff come from?
Right.
So I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to talk about anything, and I've always done that.
Yeah.
Everybody I've ever been on their podcast, I'm like, you can ask me anything because it doesn't make it right, but you can certainly hear what my opinion is and what the real direction is.
Well, let me ask you a pointed question for you personally, although it does relate to Major League Fishing. How did you qualify onto the Major League Tour this year?
So this year, we had several anglers that opted out with their changes because we're only going to have 50 guys at the end. Remember, we're 80, 65, 50.
Right.
So what we've always done from the beginning, we've always cut 10 guys, and then we brought 10 guys in from what used to be now Tackle Warehouse Invitational.
Yeah.
Prior to that, the previous circuit. And then if there is any attrition in the field, if someone retires, someone chooses to move on or whatever, then we go down the Bass Pro Tour list. So of the 10 guys cut, we simply go number 10, number 9, number 8. It's what we've done since the inception.
Yep.
So this year, and I was a couple of places down this year, we had a couple of guys. We had one retirement. I think we had a couple more guys that moved on to do something else. And so they got far enough down the list, I had another shot. I've said this before, and I really enjoy participating. I don't compete in the Bass Pro Tour. To be honest with you, I just don't have the time to compete. I know what it takes to be a pro angler.
Right.
I don't have the time for that.
It's one of my favorite things you said. You said that to me 6 months ago. I hadn't been working with you for that long, and you said that is I love to be around these guys.
Yeah.
I love going to the events. I love the travel. You love to fish, and you love to participate in it. And your commitment to be competitive is different now. You're involved in business all the time. You're in this office 5 days a week. You're not on the road. You're not pre-fishing for 3 weeks before the off limits closes. And so it's just a different place in your career right now where you're at. But you also want to be involved because you love the sport.
Well, and I'll tell you, it helps a lot to, especially with the evolution of Major League Fishing, the changes that we've made, it motivates me to work hard to try to make a better place for the new anglers coming in, the existing anglers, certainly whoever that 50 year over year will continue to be. For me to be close to those guys and stay in touch with their life and just be part of it helps me greatly. It motivates me to do it. One, and it definitely helps me understand what their challenges are so that we do the best we can to provide a good platform for our pros.
Yeah. Well, it's something that I personally don't think gets told enough, that it is a really tough competitive place to fish in.
Oh, yeah.
And you recognize that the commitment that some of these guys make, the amount of time they spend on the water, what they do in their off season, that some of these top pros right now are dedicating 300 plus days a year on the water. They don't go out and spend a bunch of time in the tree stand. They really commit to honing their craft. And so it's just a different mindset. And I enjoy the fact that you still get to go. You talk to these guys. I hear you in the hallway. You talk fishing all day long.
All day long.
Like even in business calls, you're talking about fishing and you want to know the coolest new bait and what they're catching them on. And people call you about what's happening in Guntersville. Or do you remember that time they were on the beds and we did this, and then you go into a great story. So your passion for the sport most certainly just comes out in everything you do.
Yeah. And so, hey, maybe, if I can catch them, I'll make the group. If I can't catch them, I'll fall out like the other guys that didn't catch them.
Right.
That's all you can hope for, like you do in any sport.
I get you.
But as long as that happens, I enjoy going, and if I happen to qualify, then I'll continue to participate and compete.
There you go. That's right. One other thing that we had on, I just hear that kind of stuff, and it kind of goes back to competing and participating. Are you getting a free ride? You just get to go in and just fish for free? You got to pay entry fees like everybody else, or you get to get a free ride because you're Boyd Duckett?
There's no free ride in bass fishing. Okay, no free ride. Everything we do is qualified for. I pay entry fees. I follow the rules. I'm not even Boyd Duckett when I come to the events. When the meeting's over, I might share some business information with the guys. I try to address them to keep them up to speed best I can. But, I get penalized. I pay fines. If I make a mistake, I'm no different.
Who got drawn for lie detector test?
Well, that's right. Random lie detector test. I got drawn at the first one. So
you and I joked about that, right? A week or so ago. It was like, dang, if I didn't have to go do the lie detector test.
And everybody, they may report to me in the business world, but on tournament week, Daniel Fennell, our tournament director, has no hesitation applying whatever it has to be applied, and I would not expect any different from it. We're a professional organization, and they do it right.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, to me, as we were doing this, that's the kind of things that we can talk about.
Yeah.
Because Has anyone ever asked you questions quite like that before?
Not directly.
Right. And so I think it's kind of fun that we get to share those things and you get to have that kind of conversation about it. Because, I just see those comments, those random comments. It's like, Boyd doesn't have to pay any money and he just is always going to get to qualify in and all these things. And in some cases, it couldn't be farther from the truth. I think you hold yourself to as a higher standard than you hold others to in many cases. So.
Yeah, everybody on tour has the same standard, same set of rules, and it's a sport. It's competitive. Top guys advance, bottom guys fall out. It's never going to be different than that.
Yep. All right. Well, that wraps it up. Boyd, I think that's it. It's been great here. We appreciate everybody tuning in. I had a great time. How about you?
I had a good time too, and I do want to say to the audience, we're doing this because we want the chance. We want to talk about what you want to hear. So leave us comments. Let us know how we did. If you have any suggestions, anything in the industry, there's nothing too controversial. There's nothing we're not going to tell you the truth about. Send it to us and we'll add it to the list.
Tune in next time. We might even have a surprise guest in one of these two. You don't have to listen to us every time. And Knox the dog, for certain, will be back.
7-month-old golden retriever Knox. He's knocked the lights over. He's chewed on everything in here. Hopefully we'll have him trained before next week. See you guys.
Thanks, everybody.